Lamar Jackson had one of the games of his life in week 5 against the Cincinnati Bengals, willing Baltimore to a 41-38 overtime victory. And he is finally beginning to get the respect that he deserves, while Joe Burrow is starting to get roasted. All that and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available for you all podcasting platforms. In video form on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to the channel. In audio form, you can follow along and subscribe for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Still kind of recovering from what we saw on Sunday afternoon. The Baltimore Ravens win an absolute thriller, game of the year, 41-38. And with me to break it all down and break down what people are saying about Lamar Jackson, and even in that MVP conversation through 5 weeks, is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. And Q, again, my heart was pumping throughout that entire game. It was a game that was never really truly out of reach for the Ravens because of what we saw out of Lamar Jackson for the most part. But man, you know, you have to give props to this team because when they looked down and out, they weren't. They kept believing. And at the end of that game, they executed more than Cincinnati and picked up a really important win.
Unbelievable game. Just a classic AFC North type game. I loved every bit of it from the start. All the way to the end. Every making of it, from the way each offense battled back and forth. Heck, you got a defensive splash play. Clearly, from a Bengals standpoint, they got their safety. Hubbard comes in, makes a really terrific tackle in the end zone on Derrick Henry, no doubt, against our premier fullback and Patrick Ricard. I don't know if it was a blocking scheme malfunction, but that being said, they did what they needed to do. Joe Burrow was Joe Burrow, just lighting it up. Goodness gracious, would he only have 9 incompletions or something like that? Look at his, just accuracy and targeting and his receivers stepping up, making contested catch after contested catch. And it was just awesome. Marlin Humphreys comes up with a big interception. So I'm subdued right now, but I promise you I was jumping up and down when Justin Tucker nailed that 56-yarder. And it was into the wind, and the way in which they brought him in, however, a decade plus ago, because of Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and even sometimes our own M&T Bank Stadium. It gets these funky winds, and you got to figure out Lake Erie. You got to figure out the Three Rivers in Pittsburgh. And again, you got to figure out the Queen City that is Cincinnati. All of it. He did phenomenal. So I'm just I'm basking in the glow.
And it could have been a game that they easily could have lost. But again, Lamar Jackson puts on that Superman cape, and Q, you said it right there. We can look at the quarterback comparison here. Lamar Jackson, 26 of 42, 62% completion percentage, 348 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. Did have that fumble in overtime on the botch snap, so that does go into the turnover category. But interceptions wise, he had none. Burrow also played phenomenal football. 30 of 39. You mentioned those 9 incompletions. 77% completion percentage, 392 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. And he did have that crucial interception late. And so a lot of people here were kind of wondering, what would the discourse be? Because Lamar obviously deserves all the praise for what he was able to do. I was super impressed with Lamar in this game. I thought he was poised. Did miss a couple of throws here and there. Wasn't necessarily perfect on the day. But I thought circumstantially, them playing from behind, and there's this weird narrative. We can start here with Chase Daniel, and he obviously is on the facility. And I think the intentions weren't misguided from Chase Daniel, I don't feel like. But Q, he ended up saying, I'm not sure before this game they could have won a shootout with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. His identity is run the ball. It proves you in the world you could really play with everyone and anyone. I want to make it clear right now, Lamar Jackson has done this before. This is not new. Lamar Jackson has, you want to bring up Q 2021 against the Colts? Well, that game where he came all the way back. We can talk about multiple other games where he did the same thing. So in this clip, Chase Daniel was praising Lamar Jackson. He was complimentary of him, but it's that type of narrative where it's just like, hold on a second now. Like, I understand what the, I guess, intent is at the end of the day, but in my opinion, like, this is a narrative that needs to be stopped, because we should be praising Lamar for the performance he had and a great come from behind win instead of, oh, whoa, Lamar can finally do this. Lamar's always been able to do this. It's just been that narrative that I think has some level of a hold on people still, when in reality it's misguided and really has never been true in the way that people believe it has been.
I think one of the frustrating things about it, it's because of the Greg Roman offense and his so run heavy, historic. So it is good. It was a good offense. It was a great offense. It's historic, so it had to be great. The thing is, when Lamar came into the league, all of the pundits that were watching and observing the mini camp practices and the training camp practices saw a young quarterback not really throwing as tight of a spiral as a guy who is just arm beyond arm, who now currently is in his 17th year, in Joe Flacco. And so that aspect of throwing and just like slinging it compared to where Lamar's was, it took Lamar that, plus then Joe gets hurt, Lamar comes in, and again, Greg Roman's offense is just run dominant. I was there watching his first drive down the field, and it was all runs, not a single pass. But the thing is, it ended up in a score. Now, with that said, when I look at my day, a Dan Marino, a Brett Favre, a Warren Moon, a Michael Vick, you look at these dominating, phenomenal quarterbacks, Donovan McNabb, Steve McNair. You're looking at guys who, they won an awful lot of games with their arms, and it just looked a certain way. And for the life of me, I don't understand why people want to just look at this rookie year comeuppance into the league and not look at the body of work where Lamar has gone toe-to-toe with any of those guys, except for maybe, Warren Moon and Dan Marino. But, like he can sling it, like sling the ball, like sling the beep out of the ball. And he's only just refined. I don't even want to say, oh, he's gotten better. No, Lamar has refined his game. So you gotten better means that you were bad, and all of a sudden, you're luckily, found something. No, Lamar had to refine his game in the beginning, and he's continually refined his game. But the dude is an amazing, phenomenal, dynamic, playing the game of quarterback and doing it like none other. His contemporaries outside of Patrick Mahomes, they all know who he is. And it's sad that some of my colleagues and former players, for whatever reason, they don't get it.
Yeah, and look, I mean, again, Chase Daniel, I think he was trying to say something nice. He just came out in a way that's like, this is a narrative that we've heard forever. And Q, was no secret that Lamar, coming out of college in 2018, had some work to do. But guess what? I have news. Every quarterback coming out of college has some work to do. It's just a matter of being able to refine that. But as you mentioned, it looked a certain way, and Lamar's doing it differently. And people are like, wait, this isn't what it was. Hold on a second. Wait, this looks different. And some people don't like change that way. But it's the difference between the people who accept that what Lamar is doing, and even though it's different, it is working and he is successful and he is good at what he does and he's great, and the people who let that change, or the fact that they don't like the change, blind them into saying, well, I'm just going to not like it regardless of what is actually out there on the field. So there was another thing, because I know, Q, a lot of the discourse around Lamar has been he can do everything in a loss and he will still get blamed for it, right? We have seen that for multiple years now. Joe Burrow played phenomenal football. He had a great game this week 5 against Baltimore, but he did throw a crucial interception. And actually, former Ravens player Chris Canty spent a little time in Baltimore. He went in on the Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow debate, saying we give Joe Burrow all this credit for giving Patrick Mahomes hell, but we don't want to talk about how Lamar Jackson gives Joe Burrow hell. Give me a break. And went in on that. And to me, this is a good conversation, because Joe Burrow, while he had a great game, there's always been this Joe Burrow is protected, and he doesn't have that, because we see with, even if you want to throw Josh Allen in this conversation, other guys, it's been those guys aren't talked about the way Lamar has been talked about. If you're going to talk about one guy one way, talk about the other guy the same way. Don't make up two different things. But it seems like now with that interception, Chris Canty was saying he threw the interception to lose the game. He was asked, do you want to apologize to Joe Burrow? Because he had said some stuff before the game. And he said, I'm apologizing to nobody, because Joe Burrow made a crucial mistake at the end of the game. And he mentioned it here. It's like, if we're going to talk about one guy one way, we're going to have to talk about the other guy the same way, right? And I think that is something that is refreshing for a lot of people, especially because, Q, this fan base and people who cover this team are so passionate about Lamar, because it's one thing to give him fair criticism. An example of fair criticism is he missed some throws on Sunday. He fumbled a snap when they were rushing the play on Sunday.
Technically twice, right? Even though one was the greatest play.
Exactly. But at the same time, if you're going to talk about Lamar that way, you got to talk about Joe Burrow the same way and other players. So fair criticism is one thing, but just this crazy criticism out of nowhere is another. And it looks like, at least, that Joe Burrow and these other quarterbacks might be getting that, while Lamar is maybe getting some more praise.
Well, it's about time, and it's good. And your words, I'm hearing them loud and clear that, there's this kind of almost double standard. It's interesting, because if you're a Ravens fan and you criticize Lamar, then you get the wrath of the Lamarites. But if you are a non-Ravens fan and you think you know Lamar, you're going to say general stuff that technically just shows that you don't really watch his game. He does miss throws, but last I checked, every single player in a doggone league is missing on an assignment, because they are not perfect. This game is a game of who can make the least amount of mistakes. And so that being said, Patrick Mahomes is never 100%. Joe Burrow for darn sure is not going to be 100%. Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, whoever you guys want to name is a tier higher than Lamar and all that other nonsense. The bottom line is, I think what the Joe Burrow hype train was about is that he took a team, multi-talented, offensively and defensively, to the AFC Championship game, won it against Patrick Mahomes, sure, played phenomenal, and went to the Super Bowl. And obviously came up short, and so be it. But everyone is hanging their hat on that. And that's so in the rearview mirror. Meanwhile, Lamar's been consistent throughout. And, oh, by the way, head-to-head, he's 9-1 versus Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So, AFC North, we know what time it is. I think those casual fans on the national scene, they don't know. I think what they need to do is take a look at Lamar Jackson in a fresh light and recognize just how dynamic of a player he is. He's a complete player. He does things that others can't do. That's something where, and pardon me, but what I saw on Sunday, training camp, OTAs, I see it, and I've been seeing it. And I'm like, man, like a normal quarterback, they would have been blowing the whistle, but they're not blowing the whistle. And look how his dudes adapt and adjust in the way they go and still play. And sure enough, it shows up because they know that Lamar Jackson is Lamarvelous and he can do those type of things. So hopefully it'll continue, but it's interesting until he gets his Super Bowl moment, there's going to be those people out there that are going to constantly, be trying to nitpick a game that needs no nitpicking whatsoever.
Yeah, and even after, there might still be people who try to discredit him and say, "Oh, where's the multiple? Where's the?" But again, it's like Lamar just cares about winning. He doesn't care about all that outside noise. Sometimes he'll get on social media and entertain a little bit, and that's always entertaining for everybody when Lamar has his little fun times on social media. But this is a quarterback that we need to appreciate it while he's doing what he's doing, because it is absolutely incredible. And again, an absolutely incredible quarterback battle, by the way. Both Lamar and Joe Burrow played great football. It's just one team out executed the other when it mattered most, and that was the Baltimore Ravens. Coming up, though, in the second part of the show, we'll continue talking about Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and if Lamar Jackson has officially put himself in front in the MVP conversation. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when we get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And so for the Ravens and Bengals game, if you had the over on Zay Flowers receiving yards, over on Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow passing yards, you're probably leaving large over on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. And the show is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is the most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and so much more. So if you are into economics or want to get a start on that, Economics 101 could be the course for you. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still with you here on this Taco Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you again for making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen. Each and every single day, we have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. I went live after the game, probably about 15, 20 minutes after. I was like, I was sweating. Like my heart was still beating. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to lost for words, but I have to put this, I have to talk about it for 30, 35 minutes. So that was probably one of the more fired up post-game streams I have had. And I know just watching that game unfold the way that it did, was there ever a doubt for you, or were you kind of getting worried down the stretch when the defense couldn't get a stop?
I was worried, to be honest with you, when they got the safety. I was worried when you saw how they were containing Derrick Henry, but I wasn't worried after Lamar's just phenomenal play because I just was like, okay, win, lose, or draw, this is going to be a big one as far as the learning experience for this ball club. And timeline-wise, Lamar's fumble came in overtime, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So Justin Tucker had to hit a 56-yarder before overtime to get it into overtime. I'm telling you, that kick, the poise, and I kept watching it on different highlight shows. He almost did it like kind of Steph Curry, kicked it, looked at it, and then started walking towards the sideline, Steph Curry like. Y'all doubted the GOAT. What's up? I'm back. Don't doubt me again. And did you see the viciousness of the wind? You got to trust your style, your kick to know that it's going to blow back on over. And it did. And that's just classic Justin Tucker. So with that said, all of it, the way in which the timely interception to Matabike's sack, I think as much as Zach Taylor is talking about. The head coach for the Bengals was talking about, some of his, suspect play calling at the end. I think it's Joe Burrow also is kind of like, shoot, this Ravens defense is tightening up somewhat. Let's just see this overtime. Let's just trust our leg. As opposed to, man, we're slicing and dicing them, and they're still playing cover 1, cover 0. They're still giving us opportunities, but they didn't take those opportunities.
Yep.
I'm telling you, man, that was an ebb and flow, like, oh my gosh, what's going on type of a game for me.
And if you look, ESPN does a graphic of win percentages throughout the game for each team. And that motion you made was exactly what this game was. It was up and down and up and down. And the Ravens, they're driving in overtime. Lamar fumbles. It goes back down. McPherson misses the kick. It goes back up. I've probably felt every emotion 3 times over in that game based off of everything that we saw. It was everything. It was everything. And it was a cinematic football game. But Lamar Jackson and this Ravens team, again, a lot of former players had a lot of good things to say coming out of this week. And I think as they should, not particularly defensively. And a lot of the messaging was, well, if they get that defense right, and we'll talk about that coming up in a couple of minutes in the third segment. But Nate Burleson ended up saying, quote, Derrick Henry said Lamar's the GOAT and the best QB in football. Was he lying? It seems like Lamar can do it all. I just feel like this team can hit you from every angle. We know Patrick Mahomes has been struggling this season. We're recording this before Monday Night Football, so maybe Mahomes goes out there and has 550 yards and 7 touchdowns, and we're like, oh, hold on a second. No. So I want to put that disclaimer out there because if Mahomes goes out there and just goes crazy, I want to put the disclaimer. Q and I have not watched Monday Night Football yet, all right? So we don't know what's going on there. But through 4 weeks, Patrick Mahomes has struggled. Josh Allen has had a really rough couple of weeks. Was awesome the first 3 weeks, has really struggled in weeks 4 and in week 5 as well. Joe Burrow has looked pretty good this season. Obviously struggled early, but has bounced back from that, and he looks really good. Obviously in that conversation, Q, Sam Darnold has been there, but he kind of had a stinker yesterday, or at least on Sunday as we're recording this on Monday. Baker Mayfield looks great. He's been a guy. So Lamar has kind of catapulted himself, and I think the reason people question this, Q, is because Baltimore started 0-2. And Lamar didn't play badly in those games. It was just the Ravens had moments here and there where it's like, okay, that's what dropped him. But it wasn't Lamar's fault per se. He played a hand in some of it, but he's very far down on that list of why they lost those 2 games. But now that he's played really well in these last 3, I mean, I think with everything, you do probably have to call him the best quarterback in the league right now. This season, accolades, we can talk about Mahomes. Mahomes still trumps Lamar in terms of accolades. But this season, I do believe Lamar is playing the best quarterback in the league.
So I agree. I think he dueled Patrick Mahomes. They played a type of ball that Patrick was slicing and dicing the Ravens defense. But Lamar certainly, like, you talk about coming back into a game, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we're talking a toe, and we don't need to go over all the things that happened in Kansas City, but that was a head-to-head. Since then, yes, there were moments maybe where in the Las Vegas game, but outside of that, I can't think of another quarterback that would be that top tier like Lamar. I think the running game is working because of Lamar Jackson. I think that now that he has a bona fide, just alpha stud running back in King Henry, defenses are put in such a wicked conflict. Like they don't know really what to do because of, just this dynamic runner. Okay, we can load the box, but dang it, we got Lamar Jackson to account for. And that's really difficult because he can both run and sling it. And so I think ultimately when you look at the way in which they're playing, there are guys that are doing it for their team, but not at the level that he's doing it.
Yeah, and you hear Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson over on Nightcap talking about that Isaiah Likely incredible play where, Chad is obviously a Bengals guy. And so he was watching the game and he said, look, Lamar's the real deal, man. Like that hurt. It hurt him to watch that happen. And obviously Shannon Q ended up talking about how he's just like, all he could say was, Lamar, how does that happen? And how does he do that? Like it's time and time again, visibly making defenders question their entire existence when making these plays. Sam Hubbard gets down on his knees and is like, what just happened to me? Gets stiff-armed twice. Can you kind of break down what you saw in that play as that was unfolding, Q? Like, what was going through your mind? Did you think that he was going to throw the ball away? He was getting close to the sideline, and you see that ball in the air. You're thinking, oh, man, where is this ball going to land?
So it's interesting because they put in a personnel package. It is 2 tight ends, that Cub formation. They bring in Ben Cleveland, who has declared as an eligible receiver. So now he's on the end of the line of scrimmage. You got, Ronnie Stanley flipped over to the other side, and everything just spells either we're going to run it or we're going to do what we feel we know to do, is that y'all put in some big base personnel package, which they matched them with, then we're going to throw it. And it's just Lamar, sends the, I think it was Isaiah Likely across the formation. And when he gets the snap, I'm thinking, oh, wow, I wonder what the concept's going to be. This should be like a really easy touchdown because it's, Isaiah and Mark Andrews going up against, linebackers or safeties. This is going to be, oh my God, whoa. And the composure he had to get the ball, number one. But then number two, as he's getting it, keeping his eyes up and like, man, I got this. So I'm sure Rosengarten, Ryan Stanley, Fale, and them are just like, man, we're done. We're good. You good? Yeah, I'm good. Oh, you good? You're fine too? Yeah. It should be a touchdown. Why is there not a touchdown right now? What is Hubbard still running for? Oh, shoot. Because the protection, the pocket was great. And so for Lamar, again, to show just his brilliance and stiff arm twice and finally knocking him to the ground. But then getting knocked out of bounds up in the air and throwing it. Again, like I said, he's done it in practices. And that's just Lamar. You can't say from a defensive standpoint, oh, that's unrealistic. Not anymore. No. I mean, it wasn't. We've seen it before, but the stakes at what they were, division opponent, the whole 9 yards, all that, the stakes were never as high as that was, and he straight out delivered, period.
And with all that, Q, I have dubbed it, at least in my opinion, the best play of Lamar Jackson's career. There are a bunch of plays you can put in that conversation. Would you go that route also, or would you say that a different play is the top for you?
The Houdini play, ironically enough, Kevin Harlan probably is like, I want that game twice.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that was, unbelievable. The perfect game that he had was the Los Angeles Rams game out in LA. I thought that was the perfect game I ever witnessed him play, and just the way the team was just, I mean, you couldn't stop anything that they were doing. He was just on fire. Man, Kevin, you stumped me right there, because I'm kind of in my Rolodex of thought, there were some plays he did against Tennessee, at Tennessee. That was great. Yeah. Plays that he did, we saw Kansas City Chiefs, both home and away. But I think this, again, what was at stake, mother of pearl. I'm so frustrated now, because if those catches that were from the Pittsburgh game last year, because that would have been Like, oh my God.
So many,
So
so many.
it just, I mean, this one here, stakes are high. Guys had to deliver. Like Kolar twice.
Mm.
Derrick Henry in the final bit of it all. Bateman, like my boy, shout out Tylen Wallace. Man, just an amazing job of bounce back, poise, and composure, like all of it. And so when that play within all of that, I see what you're saying as far as putting it at the top of the list.
Yeah, look, if you have it at the top, obviously I would agree with you. If you don't, I don't blame you, because there are so many different plays that Lamar has done over the course of his career that are just absolutely incredible. But coming up in the final part of the show, continue talking about Lamar a little bit and then diving into a little bit more about the game in general, breaking it down from that general sense. Stay tuned, a lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events, no matter what kind they are, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I love going to those. I've attended plenty in the past, and I love going to a couple per year to make new memories. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks to make getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, they had a great 50% off Labor Day sale for Diamondbacks Dodgers earlier in the MLB season. And so for the Ravens and the Commanders, Ravens are going to be hosting Washington in this one. And if you want to find tickets for that, be sure to go to Game Time. Whether you're looking at super deals or other tiers of deals they have to offer, Game Time has it all. The app has a ton of great features as well, including Game Time Picks, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. We are back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still with you, talking Ravens football after Baltimore's huge 41-38 overtime win over the Cincinnati Bengals. Q, I know that early MVP talks don't really mean too much, especially because things can change in the blink of an eye. But do you think Lamar's catapulted himself into the top of that conversation right now?
Well, in our previous segment, I mean, we were just gushing over him and the way he played. Stared down, even though it was run dominant, but still stared it down, the Cowboys game and made the decisive third down conversion to ice the game. You look at what they did against Josh Allen, no hotter team coming into the vault. You need to make a statement. He does. Obviously Derrick Henry was the main cog in that, but still Lamar. And then Lamar has his own standalone statement game. But I think, for him and his standard, he's probably still seething over the fumble and like, man, who cares if I had a great game? Who cares if I'm thinking about MVP? Nobody cares about that. Let's work harder. So I think, yeah, he is, and I believe it's going to take an awful lot to Jaden Daniels is in that second place seat right now, and to say that about a rookie is remarkable.
I'm looking forward to Commanders Ravens, man. Gonna be an electric atmosphere at the bank. But before we look ahead, Q, let's look back a little bit more on this Ravens and Bengals game. We'll pull up the game recap right here. A lot of offense. If you like offense, this was the game for you. 962 total yards between the two teams, 520 for the Ravens, 442 for Cincinnati. The Bengals had 371 passing yards. The Baltimore's 345 yards per pass. Cincinnati 8.8, and the Ravens, had 8. Deadlocked in yards per play, 6.8 to 6.8. But the key thing to me, third down, Q, these offenses wanted to get to third down. The Ravens converted on 10 of 15 third down, 66.6% of those, and the Bengals 8 of 14 for 57.1. So we've talked this whole show about the offensive side of the ball, about Lamar Jackson. but we have to talk about the other side of the ball too. It's not going to be as fun as the conversation, but the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the secondary, not great from that group. Jamar Chase almost had 200 yards. We talked about how well Joe Burrow played in this game. They came up with some clutch stops down the stretch, but what was this to you? Was this miscommunications? Was this play calling? Was this guys just not being in the right spots? Was it secondary? Was it all three levels? What led to this poor defensive performance, do you think?
So I think a few things. One, clearly we're talking about T. Higgins and Chase. Heck, even their third receiver, baller, Gesicki, he's had some really highlight reel type plays over his course of his career. Good to see him kind of settle into a space where maybe they can appreciate him. I think the lack of a consistent pass rush, the man-to-man, the contested catches, yeah. I mean, there was some miscommunication and or some things that need to be better from a Marcus Williams safety aspect, both on Jamar Chase's, his jaunt down the sideline to his deep over route for a touchdown. But I think, that shootout, that third down conversion is that's rarefied air right there, both sides of the ball. But I think the Ravens defense, they had pressure, but it wasn't enough. At the right time, Nnamdi Madubuike showed up, and that was awesome. There was some also other pressures as well in the later portion of the game, but I think that's where, when you talk about, just a quarterback who is, in the zone. Obviously, we saw Lamar, but Joe Burrow was just in the zone, and he has some studs on the outside that will make any defensive backfield unit look silly.
Yeah, been a rough go of things for Marcus Williams this season, especially with that contract. It's been kind of tough to kind of swallow that play if you're Baltimore, just because he is supposed to be such a big part of that group. Brandon Stevens had a rough one in this one too, made a big play on T. Higgins, but honestly didn't even turn his head for that ball, which has been a big contention point for him. So he has to be able to just kind of work and get his head around on those plays to be able to see and locate the ball. But again, the secondary was the group that gave the Ravens a chance, funny enough, out of everything. It was Marlin coming up on that slant. The Bengals had just dominated Baltimore on that slant play the entire game. And Marlin comes up with an interception in the biggest moment to give Baltimore a shot to tie/win the game. And obviously they went and they tied it. But Q, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hopping on. As always, tell people where they can find you, what you're working on, and where people can find your work.
Yeah, missiletraining.com. And if you go to missiletraining.com, you will see there is human movement, sports performance training, and better movement at your fingertips, and an access and opportunity to work with me, giving you 3 decades worth of experience and understanding on both the physical and psychological side to being your best. That being said, WJZ is the spot to go to when it comes to Purple Pregame. Purple Pregame is where you can see me every Sunday, breaking it down with Alex Glaze. And of course, I will be remiss not to say Locked on Ravens. That's where we at. Kevin Ostreicher, Qadry Ismail, breaking it all down for you. Love chopping it up with you guys. Hang out with us. Come see me. Come find me. I'm here.
Absolutely. Every single week. We talked a lot today about a bunch of former players talking about Lamar and praising Lamar. Well, guess what? We had a former player on here the entire show hyping up Lamar, talking about Lamar, and giving his incredible insight. So, Q, appreciate you as always. Be sure to follow Q and check out all his work. Links in the description down below. Q, appreciate you as always, man. Thank you. And thank you to everybody for listening and watching today to Locked on Ravens. One more time on the way out, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, and follow along and subscribe in audio form as well 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage, plus bonus episodes like we went live after the game. We go live after every single Ravens game. We're almost at 9,000 subscribers, coming up on 8,500 right now on YouTube, and that audio version continues to grow every single day. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content for you, so I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.